Every year we get a little bit closer to our goal of food independence, but it has definitely been a journey. Over the last 5 years, we've planted all kinds of fruit trees and berries. Thankfully, those are perennials, so we only need to plant them once and then maintain them. We also raise chickens, turkeys, pigs, and cattle each year, and we've tried our hand at growing greens. And then finally, one of the most time-intensive parts of the food independence journey is planting the annual vegetable garden. So it all begins with growing seeds long before it's time to transplant them in the ground. Then of course there's a lot of soil preparation, and then finally the planting begins. So far this year we've transplanted onions, then planted peas, we planted green beans, potatoes, lettuce, watermelon, and carrots. Unfortunately, after many rainstorms and cold weather, we had to replant the potatoes after they rotted in the soil. That definitely set us back quite a bit, but now we are on the home stretch of finishing planting our summer crops. Since we're growing a year supply of vegetables for our family of 8, it is definitely more of a marathon, not a sprint. We do a little bit every day over a long stretch of time. Last fall, I planted a mix of cover crop seed in a 3,000 square foot area in our second garden area here. And now it's time to terminate that cover crop before it goes to seed. So I have a couple of options of what I can do. Usually I go through and crimp the cover crop and then tarp it, and then I transplant things into that. I'm actually not doing that this year. I wanted to try something a little bit different. I'm thinking about direct sowing corn in this area, and so to do that I wanted to mow this cover crop using my flail mower, which cuts it into little tiny itty bitty pieces so that it decomposes really fast. So actually I'm gonna mow it and then make sure it has been watered, and then tarp it, and after a couple of weeks come back, see what it looks like. Hopefully it'll be decomposed enough that I can directly sow my corn right into that. So the first order of business is to get the irrigation out of here. I have some irrigation that I just set here for the time being. It's not hooked up to anything. And then I have another overhead irrigation thing over here that I'm going to pull out just because I'm nervous that I'm gonna run over it with the mower. So I'm going to pull everything out first. Yesterday I spent an hour trying to figure out how to get the tractor to work after going like 5 feet and having it shut off. I was on the phone with Cam. He was at work, so he couldn't come home and help, so I just was kind of trying to troubleshoot myself. I totally failed at that. I am not good at this kind of stuff, so I waited until he got home, and he worked on it late last night and was able to find out that the clutch, the cable that's attached to that, it was too tight, and that's why it wasn't working. So he fixed it. He did an entire row last night just to make sure everything was good. So we should be good to go today. I really hope this works. Before I plant anything else, I want to make sure I get a timer hooked up onto this spigot. This is the one that goes to the second tunnel. I have a really bad habit of turning the water on and then forgetting it's on, so I need to make sure I get a timer on here. I want to thank our sponsor for this video, B&Link. They make this programmable watering timer that I am going to hook up right now. I got the timer all set up and ready to go. It literally took me less than a minute to get everything programmed on here. That is one thing I love about this timer, is it has a very simple design. It is very easy to use. I love that it has this big LCD screen so that you can see it really well. To program this timer, all I needed to do was set the clock. Then I chose the start time, how long I wanted it to go, and how often. Some other cool things about this timer is that it is waterproof. It hooks up to any regular garden hose. It does have a rain delay, so you can hold the delay button and then it will flip to either 24 hours and you can press the button again. It goes to 48 or 72 hours. It also has a manual button that you can just hold down, and then once it turns to the manual, you just press OK and it turns on from there. You'll just hear it click, and it'll start running. Right now I have it all programmed and ready to go, but we're just going to check things with the manual setting. So I'm going to turn on this hose and make sure it works. I have one more thing I need to double check with this timer, and that is making sure that the program time I had set, that works. The irrigation is on and working. I am so excited about this. It is just one less thing I have to worry about. Adding a timer to your garden irrigation is a no-brainer. They are so affordable and they do so much good for the plants. If you are in the market for a garden timer, I recommend BN Link. They have given me a 15% off discount code for you guys. You can find that code and the link to this timer down in the video description. Inside of our second high tunnel, I decided to plant some summer squash and some winter squash. And in preparation for that, I need to pull out some of these perennial weeds that are coming up through the compost. We got most of it prepped earlier this spring by putting down the compost, so I gotta get those out. Then we're gonna put down some fertilizer, then I'm going to put down some weed paper. It's very important to have the weed paper with winter squash especially. It's just really hard to like weed around that stuff. So I'll have that down and then stake it all in, and we will plant the squash in that. This spring, I feel like every time I get on here, I'm telling you about some kind of storm. And tonight we are expecting another storm. So I've got to close down the sides of all the tunnels and the doors and just kind of clean things up around here. Hopefully we don't get anything. It's supposed to be a really bad one. They let out schools early, so I'm just going to get as prepped as possible here in the garden. Yesterday I finished planting the summer squash. I thought I would be able to plant everything in one day, but that didn't end up happening. So today I'm going to wrap up planting the winter squash. It is starting to get hot outside. Today it's above 80 degrees, so it is really warm in here. Even with the sides open and the doors open and stuff, it gets really hot. So usually once it gets to like 80 degrees or above consistently, I put a shade cloth over the top of the tunnels. The shade cloth is going on so that we can be comfortable in here and so that the plants can be comfortable in here. We finished up planting the squash yesterday. I still have a ton of room inside of this new tunnel that I have. So that is exciting because I have more tomatoes to plant. I had initially planned on planting them outside, but because I have space in the tunnel, I'm gonna go ahead and plant them in there. They are Roma tomatoes, and usually Romas are one that I plant outside just because they're easier to trellis. They're smaller and bushier, and they don't just keep vining all season long. They just get to a certain height and they stop, which makes them easy to trellis outside. But because I have the space in the tunnel, I may as well just plant them in here. I have a couple other varieties that are indeterminate, so I'll try and make sure I get all of the indeterminate ones on one row because those will need the overhead trellising, and then put my Romas on another row because for the Romas I will use my usual method of like T-posts, and then I just Florida weave them to trellis. I forgot that I needed to wet down the paper and then let it shrink before planting those tomatoes in there, because if I were to make a hole and plant the tomato in it before wetting down the paper, then the hole where the tomato is would shift over and the plant would be somewhere underneath the paper. So it's just easier to wet it down, let it shrink, then do all the planting after that. So while that is drying, I'm going to be working over here. I'm going to take our BCS and Power Harrow and stir in some of this compost that we put on top of the soil. Then I'm going to put down some weed paper and plant some sweet potatoes in there. I've been working on planting these tomatoes over the last couple of days. I haven't gotten very far. It is very slow going because I have these big 4-inch soil blocks and I am planting in the paper, so I can't just use a shovel and make a giant hole there. I have to kind of make like the right size hole for the soil block. So now that it is Saturday, Cam's here and my older kids are here to be able to help. They're actually just gonna help inside with the 2 youngest ones so that I can just knock this out, or at least I hope so. And then Cam's gonna grab some trellis stuff so we can get these all trellised today. It has been raining all weekend and into today. Today is Memorial Day. It's a lovely cloudy day with nonstop rain, and my garden is basically flooding right now, which is terrible. But the good thing is that we do have weather forecasts. So I knew that we were forecasted to get about 7 inches of rain over the weekend. So Cam and I, we pulled out a lot of the potatoes that we replanted in the ground, and I literally set them on top of the soil where the soil is right now. And then we put compost over that. And then we put some hay over that so the soil wouldn't wash out with all this rain. Even though these beds are slightly raised, it's just not enough for anything in ground. So putting the potatoes on top of the soil and then hilling on top of that, hopefully that works out. We woke up today with even more rain. This is not what I had planned for the end of this video. I was hoping to have everything planted, but sometimes it just doesn't work out like we hope. I actually looked up how much rainfall we have received this year because I know it is way more than normal. In the months of only April and May, there has been 25 inches of rain recorded. Our usual 30-year average is 11 inches. So we're at more than double right now. Every year there's always some unexpected challenges, but we've learned there is no such thing as a normal growing season. So we know it's important to be resilient and keep growing no matter what obstacles come our way.